Hi everyone, welcome back to Julia's story. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. Rain stitched the evening into one long sheet of gray. It came down hard enough to turn the freeway ramp into a dull waterfall and soft enough to hide us if no one looked twice. I sat on a torn gym mat that used to smell like lemons, Lily asleep across my lap, Noah counting buses with his breath so I could pretend he was not counting hunger. Every few minutes a car idled beside the curb above us, a warm hum of money that never stayed. We were a smudge on the city's sleeve. If you rubbed hard enough, we would come off. A light changed at the intersection and a black car rolled to a stop where the curb sagged. The window lowered. A man leaned toward the rain with the careful curiosity of someone who has learned not to flinch. His voice came out low and sure, like he did not want it to startle. Eva. My name struck the air and stayed there. No one had said it that way in a long time. Not since the campus library when nights were caffeine and footnotes and the world felt like a door I knew how to open. I tightened my arm around Lily and looked up. The city lights cut a thin line across his cheekbone. The face clicked into place. Julian Hale. The scholarship kid who borrowed my notes and paid me back with a paper so clean it could have been ironed. The one I used to meet at the long wooden table by the west windows, where we whispered about commas like they were fate. He did not comment on the mat or the grocery cart with one wheel that fought me. He did not look at the cardboard sign propped against a column, the one I stopped using after 2 weeks because pity tastes like rust when it sits in your mouth too long. He looked at me the way people look at their own handwriting in a notebook they forgot they kept. I have soup, he said. The driver stepped out from the car and angled an umbrella so the drip line missed Noah's shoes. He handed me a paper cup with a lid, steam leaking around the rim. Chicken and ginger. I felt the smell before the heat. Noah sat up and blinked hard, as if he were pulling the night into focus with his eyelids. For them, Julian said, nodding to my kids. For you too. I passed the lid to Noah. He took the first careful sip and then another, lips shining. Lily stirred, a soft whimper curling through her throat. I pressed my palm to her back. The rain learned a gentler rhythm above our heads. Julian glanced at the ramp, at the puddle that always forms where the gutter fails, at the routes a person learns when she has to keep small bodies warm. His jaw worked once and settled. He was not the boy with a backpack anymore. The suit was quiet and expensive. The watch looked like it told time for people who never waited. But the gaze belonged to someone who remembered what hunger does to language. I can take you to a hotel, he said. One night. Your name on the key. No conditions. Tomorrow you tell me what you want next, and I will listen before I offer anything. I never liked the heat that crawls up my neck when a person says help like a trick. He did not make it sound like that. He kept his voice in the middle register where truth lives. I looked at the car, at the promise of dry seats and sheets that could erase a day's worth of grit from a child's hairline. I looked at my children. Lily opened her eyes, heavy with sleep, and lifted her arm toward the light like it was something she could hold. A bus groaned past above us and threw a spray across the curb. The city used to be mine in a way that made me reckless with gratitude. Then Caleb turned love into firewood and tossed our savings into his own blaze, and every door the city had opened to me learned how to close. The past pressed its hand to the glass of the black car and waited to be recognized. Julian read the pause and did not crowd it. He gestured to the driver. The umbrella moved, widening its circle to cover Noah's knees. The driver lowered his head in a small nod that told me his name would be the kind I could say without fear. I will not take a photo, Julian said. I will not tell a story that does not belong to you. This is not charity. It is a roof for a night while you decide what roof comes next. Noah looked up at me with soup heat on his lips and rain in his lashes. Mom, he said, voice quiet. Lily is cold. I lifted my girl, her weight the good kind of heavy against my chest. The gym mat sighed under us when I stood. I felt the rain learn the new shape of our absence. The grocery cart rattled as I pulled it closer, the one bad will tapping the song it always played on concrete. I wanted to say yes with dignity and no with pride at the same time. Both options tasted like metal. The driver popped the trunk. He did not try to touch our bags. He let me hand each one over, a ritual I had learned to keep my control alive. Julian stepped back by an inch. He had always understood space. He had learned to make it look like respect instead of strategy. "Your name is still Eva Ward," he said, soft enough for only me. "Say yes for tonight and keep your name on the key." There is something about hearing your name pronounced like a promise instead of a label. It loosens a knot you did not know had tightened. I nodded once. "Yes," I said. "For them." He did not smile like a winner. He lifted his hand to the driver and the umbrella shifted to cover the car door. Noah climbed in first, legs careful on the leather. I settled Lily against my shoulder and slid into the back seat. The warmth climbed my legs and told my bones they could stop shivering. Julian waited outside until the driver had closed us in. He said something into the rain that I could not hear, a line meant for the night, not for me. Then he rounded the hood and slipped in beside the driver. He did not look back to check if I had changed my mind. The car eased into the lane. As we rolled forward, a billboard flickered across the next block. A woman in a silver dress smiled down at the river. Celeste Moore. The caption, all gold script, announced an engagement party that the city would pretend to love. A man stood beside her with a hand on her waist. In the soft wash of light, the profile looked familiar enough to make my throat tense. Caleb had a way of appearing where a person least wanted him. The light turned green. The driver pressed his foot and the car glided into the night. Lily shifted and sighed against my neck. Noah held the paper cup with both hands like it was a small son. Julian's phone buzzed on the console. He glanced once and flipped it face down. The screen had flashed with a name I knew too well. Caleb Ward. The past was not only pressing its hand to the glass. It was already calling. The hotel lobby smelled like lemon and quiet. The night manager said my name the way a person reads it off a card and decides to mean it. 2 key cards slid across the counter in a small white sleeve. Eva Ward. The letters sat there steady as a table. The elevator hummed us upward. Noah counted floors in a whisper. Lily sagged against my shoulder like a warm bundle that had finally forgiven the day. The room opened on soft light and a window that held the river without bragging. The bed looked impossible. The bathroom tiles shone. Towels waited on a rack like folded patience. I set Lily down and she curled into the pillow with a small sound that was not a word. Noah walked straight to the sink and turned on the tap and watched clear water run like a magic trick he remembered from a better time. I helped them out of their clothes and into the shower. The hot water reached them and they laughed. The kind of laugh you can only make when your skin remembers heat as a friend. I rubbed the city out of their hairlines. I scrubbed elbows and knees and the crescent moons of dirt that collect under small nails. The steam softened the world. The mirror fogged. I wiped a circle with a hand towel and a face looked back that I recognized and did not. Older around the eyes. The same mouth that knows how to keep a line steady when the floor tilts. They came out pink and drowsy. I pulled cotton sleep shirts from a bag the driver had left by the door. The tags felt like sand against my fingers, proof that new things still existed. Noah climbed under the covers and pulled them to his chin. Lily stretched in a way only children can and rolled into the warm dip beside him. Sleep took them in one clean motion and left their faces light. I stood in the doorway and watched their breath climb and fall. The silence in the room was not empty. It was full of 5,000 small sounds that do not try to be heard. The tick of a vent. The soft buzz of the city through glass. The whisper of fabric under restless feet. Julian stayed by the desk, so the door stayed clear. He had taken off his jacket and folded it over the chair. The white sleeve with the keycards lay beside his phone, screen down. He looked at the children first. He looked a long time. His eyes did what eyes are supposed to do in the presence of small sleep. They went gentle. I went to the sink and scrubbed my hands a second time. Soap and hot water. Then my face. Then my teeth. It is astonishing what those three things can return to a person. I found the hotel robe and tied it tight and sat on the edge of the second bed. My old shirt lay across my lap. I smoothed it out and felt the seams with my thumb, a habit from a life when fabric was a choice and not a prayer. He took the chair across from me, careful to keep the space between us honest. He did not reach for his phone. He did not open his mouth with a speech. He waited for my voice to belong to me again. After graduation, I said, and the words moved like a train that had been waiting in a tunnel. I told him about the apartment with the crooked window that faced the bakery. I told him about mornings that smelled like butter and plans that sounded like music. I told him about Caleb and the way charm can look like care when you are 22 and the world is still generous with its first chances. I let the shape of the fall sit in the air between us. The secret lover. The years he hid more than one truth. The credit lines with my name stapled to them. The savings that evaporated while he promised a raise that never existed. I said the word eviction and kept my voice level so it would not be the loudest sound in the room. I said the word debt and watched it land. I said the word custody and explained the way paper can tell the truth too late to help. Julian listened the way good readers listen. His eyes stayed on me, not on the carpet, not on the window, not on the part of the story that would have let him imagine himself a hero. His jaw tightened once, the same way it used to when he found a logic flaw in a case study and wanted to fix it with a pen. He said nothing until I had said everything I could say without breaking the night. He rested his forearms on his knees and looked down at his hands for one long breath. Then he looked up and I could see the campus library in his face again, the quiet table with the west windows and the stack of grammar books between us. "Do you remember the essay?" he said. "The scholarship one that had to sound like a person and a plan. You found my verbs. You cut the parts that were me trying to sound like a better man than I was. You handed it back and told me to tell the truth in a voice I could stand to hear later." I remembered. We had stayed until the security guard did his slow lap and cleared his throat to tell us the lights would go down. I had written a note on a blue sticky square and slapped it on the top page. "If you fall, call me before you hit the ground." He nodded, seeing the same night. "I did not call," I said. "I am here anyway," he said. The phone on the desk buzzed once, a small insect of sound. He turned it over, glanced, and flipped it back. I did not need to see the name to know who it was. Caleb had a way of finding lights and putting his face near them. I took a long breath and let it steady me. "Thank you for the room," I said. "For the way you kept my name on the key. Tomorrow is another thing. Tonight I need you to believe that this is not a rescue. It is a pause so I can choose." He nodded. His agreement landed without ceremony. "I have 2 offers," he said, "and I will speak them once and then be quiet. The first is simple. I can put you and the kids in a temporary apartment that is not a headline. A few months. Rent handled. Groceries covered. No cameras. You tell me where to send the help and I send it without signing my name to it." He let the air settle around that. Then he went on. "The second is heavier. Not louder." He looked toward the window, then back. "People who trust Caleb are about to learn they should not. If you want me to, I will pull a thread until the whole sweater is in my hands. I can do it without using your story as part of the yarn. But it will bring you into rooms you left on purpose. I will not do it unless you decide that is a room you can stand in for a while." I rubbed the seam of my shirt again. Noah murmured in his sleep and went quiet. Lily turned her face toward the window and found more pillow. Help cannot make me a prop, I said. If I move because I choose, not because a man chose to clean his conscience in public. Good, he said. That is the only way I work now. He stood and crossed to the window and looked down at the river. The city had switched from silver to black. Lights sat on the water like coins. He spoke without turning. There is one more thing. I did not expect to say it tonight, but the message on my phone changed the clock. He lifted the device and showed me the screen without letting it glow in the room. A single line from a number I did not know. He read it aloud so I would not have to step into the cone of light. Your name is on a lease he never told you about. The building is in play. Documents ready by morning. The words reached me and rearranged the air in my chest. A lease with my name. A building in play. The kind of sentence that means something is already moving whether I like it or not. He put the phone face down again and took his jacket from the chair. I have someone meeting us at 8, he said. She knows how to touch paper and find what it is hiding. If you tell me to call it off, I will. If you tell me to open the door, we open it. A soft sound came from the hallway. A footfall. The whisper of paper under a door. Julian crossed the carpet and picked up an envelope without a name. He held it to the light, and I could see the outline of a keycard pressed flat inside, along with a single sheet. He looked at me, not asking, waiting. Inside the envelope, paper shifted. A corner slid and glinted. The room held its breath while the night set something new on the table between us and walked away. The envelope was hotel white and too heavy for a tip. Julian slid it with his thumb and shook a key card onto his palm. A single sheet followed, folded twice and creased like someone with neat hands had done the work. He read it once, then turned it so the room light could share it with me. A photocopy of a lease measured the page from corner to corner. My name ran across the line for primary tenant, clean as if I had written it with a ruler under my hand. The signature looked like mine until the loop on the W turned the wrong way. The listed unit number made my stomach tighten. The building was 3 blocks from the bakery with the crooked window, the one we had lost when the word eviction went from paper to door. Julian tucked the copy back into the envelope and set it on the desk as if the paper could hear. He placed the key card beside it and exhaled quietly. We slept in separate beds and in a way that still counted as sleep. I woke to the soft sound of rain against glass and the steadier sound of 2 children breathing like metronomes set to human. Noah opened his eyes and grinned straight into the day. Lily yawned so wide I could see the last sweet of sleep leave her cheeks. Toast arrived because a person at the front desk had decided to be kind without asking permission. Jam came in square packages that looked like toys. Noah spread his with a surgeon's focus. Lily bit into hers and painted her lip pink. I wiped their faces and packed our bags in a speed I had learned when life kept trying to run ahead of me. We were in the hallway by 7. The key card locked into the door with a small sound that felt like a finish line. A quiet woman with dark hair waited in a conference room 2 floors down. No perfume. No sharp jewelry. She stood when we entered and greeted the children first, which told me everything I needed to know about the world she preferred to live in. She introduced herself as Nora. No title. Julian's assistant slipped in behind us with a tablet under her arm and a look that said both good morning and we have work. Nora set a stack of files on the table and a plain folder on top labeled with my name in tidy blue ink. She kept her voice steady and soft, the kind tone that turns sharp things into facts. The lease copy had been pulled from a bundle of filings tied to a limited company that sounded like a shell trying to imitate a real name. 2 notarizations did not match the stamp on the page. The notary listed had retired last spring. The witness had never existed. The loop on the W gave away a template someone had cut from an old document and used without understanding that a person's hand has weather in it. She slid a second page forward. The building, the one 3 blocks from the bakery, had been packaged with 6 other properties and offered as a debt bundle to a quiet circle of investors. One buyer had already laid down a reservation. Contract pending. Transfer scheduled to close in 8 days. She pointed to a line halfway down. Protected tenancy clause for primary tenants with minor children remained in force under city law, a small sentence that could change a life if someone remembered to read it. Julian watched my face like he was reading a weather map for sudden storms. He did not fill the silence. He let the law sit on the table with its small print and its hidden door. Under the next page, records bloomed like a field that had been waiting under snow. Credit applications with my name and the wrong middle initial. 2 credit lines opened the week Caleb claimed his bonus had posted. A car I had never driven leased in a county I had not visited since college. A chart of transfers. Numbers that jumped between accounts as if they were frogs in a rain barrel. Nora never raised her voice. She tapped her finger once, and the column opened to show the bank that had carried each hop. It felt like watching a trick taught backward until you saw the coin in the palm. The last file was thin and mean. Photos from a photographer who made his living in rooms that wore chandeliers. Celeste in silver under a headline about a charity gala next week. Caleb in a tuxedo that knew how to pose. A schedule written in clean letters that spoke in steps. Arrival lines. Donor thanks. A toast about second chances. A private moment on the balcony for the couple with a city behind them like a crown. My name sat on a list of talking points for a speech that claimed generosity as a virtue and shame as a tool. 2 words only. Past hardship. The letters bit. I looked at Julian. His jaw had that set I remembered from the campus table when he wrestled a problem that did not respect the time allotted. The assistant slid a glass of water toward my hand, and the gesture uncurled my fingers from the edge of the table. Nora spoke again with that gentle exactness. There are 2 lanes, she said. The first keeps you and the children out of the rooms where people who love a story go to clap for themselves. We use the clause. We file to correct the lease. We freeze the bundle before transfer and force the seller to admit the error. We move you back into a place that recognizes your name as a fact rather than a trick. We build the rest in quiet. Work. School. Groceries that do not feel like an apology. In that lane, the city will not learn your face unless you want it to. She let me breathe. Then she laid out the second lane, not with drama, with care. The gala is a machine that wants to turn your life into a parable it can eat. We can break the machine, not by noise, by structure. If you choose that lane, we enter that room with a switch in our pocket. When they press the button for spectacle, we press the one that turns on the light for paper. Debt bundles, leases, clauses that refuse humiliation. It is your call. We do not move unless you say move. Noah had finished his juice and was tracing the edge of the coaster with one finger. Lily held her toast by 2 corners like a picture frame for crumbs. I took both their hands for a second and felt the room drop into the kind of stillness where only your own breath matters. Then I reached for the lease copy and read it again until the loop on the W stung my eyes. Help cannot make me a prop, I said. My voice stayed low. If we go to that room, we go to change a rule, not to feed a headline. If we stay away, we still change the rule. Either way, my children do not become proof for a man's story about himself. Julian nodded. Good, he said. He turned to the assistant. Hold the filing at the registrar. Flag the notarization. Prepare the clause for immediate transfer if the bundle moves. He turned to Nora. Pull a list of the building's primary tenants with minor children and start drafting letters that explain their rights in plain language. No logos. No signatures. Just facts. Nora slid one more page across the table. The forged signature sequence had a pattern so sloppy it almost tried to confess. For documents shared the same wrong loop and the same timing stamp from an office printer sold 3 years ago to a private buyer. The buyer's address matched a storage unit Caleb had rented last winter. Julian's mouth tightened for a beat. He looked at my kids. He looked at me. He kept his voice even. There is enough here to move a court to freeze the accounts and enough to move a room to change its tone, he said. We will choose which door to walk through when your feet tell you they are ready. We spent the next hour drawing a map that did not look like a map. It looked like a list of simple tasks in a neat hand. A replacement identity card for me because the last one was taken when the landlord changed the locks. School transfer forms printed and folded into my bag because a mother who walks into a school with paper finds the door slightly more open. A small debit card loaded for a month of groceries with no receipt attached to a man's pride. A phone line set to my name that would not ring in the middle of the night with a number I did not want. A new bank account with the smallest minimum to make it real. Things that stack into a life when you put them in order. Noon found us in the lobby with coats zipped and a different posture in our shoulders. Julian arranged the car with a wave that remembered courtesy more than power. The driver took the kids' bags without looking at the labels. The assistant handed me a plain folder with 5 sheets that would keep us from being turned away when a clerk needed a reason to help. Nora shook my hand with a grip like dry rope. If you call, she said, use the word urgent only if a door has already shut. Otherwise, use my name. It opens better. Back at the curb under a sky learning how to stop raining, I made one call. Not to Caleb. Not to anyone on his side of the story. To the school I loved as a girl because the librarian used to tuck poetry into the book spines on Fridays. The woman at the desk put me on hold and returned with a voice that knew how to keep children safe. She asked for forms. I said I was bringing them. She said to come between 3 and 4 when the hallways were quiet. On the ride across town, Noah pressed his forehead to the glass and counted delivery vans as if the city were a game he could win by noticing. Lily sang under her breath and fell asleep mid-song. I watched the streets pass like pages and kept my hand on the folder like it might try to run. Julian broke the quiet only once. He said he had been invited to an engagement party next week that pretended to be about a charity while offering a room to people who enjoyed being watched. He said my name was not on the list. He said it would not appear unless I placed it there myself. A red light held us at an intersection that remembered me. Across the street, the bakery rolled up its metal gate. The smell of bread crossed 4 lanes and found us through the car's filter. I felt the old window in my body like a place that had been a favorite chair. We pulled up outside a strip of offices that wear their usefulness without shame. Nora had arranged for a 10-minute slot at the registrar. 10 minutes for a clerk with kind eyes to record that my signature belonged to my hand and not to a man with a printer and a storage unit key. 10 minutes for the loop on my W to find its rightful shape again. By the time the clerk stamped the last page, the line outside had thickened. Behind us, a woman cradled a sleeping toddler and whispered the alphabet to keep herself steady. I stepped back and held the door for her when it was her turn. She nodded without lifting her eyes. She smelled like rain and courage. I recognized both. The afternoon thinned into a series of small victories. The school took the forms and gave me a list of pencils and a map of the cafeteria. The bank printed me a card with my name on it and handed it over as if the world had always planned to do so. The grocery store put 2 apples in a brown bag for free because Lily smiled at the cashier as if she had invented fruit. At dusk, Noah pressed his nose to the window of a new place on a block I did not yet know and asked if the noodles were real. They were. We ate them with our coats on, steam rising, shoulders touching, the table too small to argue with. Back at the hotel, the night manager slid a small envelope across the desk as we passed. No name on the front. Inside, a single card with 3 words handwritten in neat ink. Call when ready. I tucked the card into the folder with the lease copy and the school map. The key card warmed in my hand as we rode the elevator. The doors opened on our floor with a bell that sounded like a line reaching its end. Not the story, the sentence. We walked down the hall and I counted the doors out of habit. The day had stacked itself into something that could bear weight. In 8 days a transfer would try to erase a clause that could save us. In 1 week a room with chandeliers would try to eat my name. I set the folder on the desk and felt the paper breathe like a patient thing that knows when to wait and when to move. The invite called it a charity gala, but the building compared itself to a mirror. Glass everywhere. Marble that wanted to be looked at. Lights that turned the room into soft gold. I rode the elevator with Julian and felt the music in my ribs before I heard it. A string quartet hid behind a curtain. The sound poured into the air like warm tea. Nora had arranged every inch without leaving her fingerprint. The sitter took Lily and Noah to a movie with a bucket of popcorn and a promise to text me at the credits. My phone sat in my clutch, set to vibrate. The folder with the lease copy and the clause stayed in a small safe at the hotel front desk with my name on the claim tag. I could feel the weight of it without touching it. At the door, a woman with a clipboard smiled in a way that asked for a story. Julian gave her his name, then stepped half a pace behind me. He did not announce me. He let the usher read the card that simply said Eva Ward and decide how to hold her face. She decided on polite. The line parted. The room opened. Tables wore white cloth and arguments about taste. Waiters moved like trains that learned how to bend. Celeste stood near the staircase with a smile that preferred photographers to people. Silver dress catching every light. Caleb at her side in black, and a grin I knew too well. He had always loved a room. He loved it more when he could teach it a trick. I took 1 slow pass to memorize exits and corners. The balcony doors were already cracked by an inch, shears lifting in a tide that pretended to be a breeze. The stage sat higher than it needed to, a wooden jaw ready to speak. A screen hung behind it, blank and expectant. In the far left corner, a man with a camera watched the balcony with the patience of a fisherman. Julian kept near, but not near enough to turn my shadow into his. People nodded to him, then looked at me and did math in their heads. The answers showed in their eyebrows. Charity, the right one said without moving. Date, the left one tried. Neither fit. I let them keep their confusion like a favor. We cut along the perimeter, past centerpieces with branches that pretended to be trees. A server paused beside me, tray steady, eyes sharper than the crystal. She spoke in a voice meant for one listener. Careful on the balcony, she said. That door is hungry. I lifted my water in thanks. She drifted on. When we reached the corner by the coat check, the walls learned how to whisper. I heard my name drag a little as it moved from one mouth to another. Past hardship said a voice that thought it sounded kind. Good optics said a voice that did not care who was in the hallway listening. I stepped into a shadow beside a gilt column and tilted my ear toward the staff corridor. The sound sharpened. We will usher her out for air, a woman said. One good soul with soft hands will take her elbow and point her toward the view. The photographer is already paid, said a man. A quiet shot sells better than a scene. Caleb gets his moment. Celeste gets her glow. Everybody wins. Everybody, I thought, often means the people with the microphones. No footsteps came near. No one knew I was there. I eased back into the room. Julian looked at me once and read the news in my expression. His jaw set and then loosened. He poured calm into the air the way some men pour perfume. He let me stand in it until my breath remembered its job. The speeches began like trains leaving stations at set minutes. Donors thanked donors. A host made a joke that had lived too long. The screen behind the stage flashed a logo for Mercy with a price list for tables. Celeste floated to the microphone and talked about possibility like it was a dress you could borrow for a night. She did not say my name. She did not have to. My story sat in the room without being invited to sit. Caleb waited for her to finish like a man measuring his entrance against the rhythm of applause. When it hit the notch he wanted, he stepped forward and took the microphone with fingers that knew their tricks. He smiled at the lights. He smiled at the balcony. He smiled at me and let the smile carry a message it did not say aloud. I can still tug the strings. To second chances, he said. To good hearts that open doors. To the brave souls among us who have known winter up close and still walk into a room with grace. Polite laughter. Throats cleared. Heads tipped toward me the way a field leans in wind. I sipped my water and set the glass down without leaving a ring. The man by the balcony adjusted his lens and focused on the threshold. Julian stood with his hands loose at his sides, a man who had decided that restraint could be a shield if you learned how to hold it. His assistant waited by the sound booth with a face that looked like a thought. Nora, somewhere I could not see, would be counting breaths and watching doors. The thread she had tugged on all week lay coiled and ready at the edge of the stage where the cables met the wooden lip. Caleb raised his glass higher. He was about to tell a story he had rehearsed in the mirror. I could hear it in the way he clipped his words. I could see it in the way he looked past Celeste to the screen, the way a person looks at a prop that has to hit its mark for the trick to land. I moved. Not fast. Not slow. Through the center aisle where the carpet made a soft path. People turned their heads as if the room had agreed to follow me without admitting it to itself. I climbed the shallow steps and stopped at the edge of the light. Caleb did not step back. He has never liked to share a frame. May I said to the air and to the mic and to any person with sense. The host, who had been practicing being useful, hustled forward with a second microphone and handed it to me like he had always planned to. The sound tech lifted his eyes from the board. He waited for a disaster. He did not get one. I faced the room. Chandeliers. Faces. The balcony door breathing. Somewhere near the back, the cameraman realized his first plan would not pay and began to swing his lens toward the stage. The screen behind me flickered in white. A cursor blinked in a corner like a heartbeat. Julian shifted his weight and, without anyone noticing, nodded once toward the booth. "Good evening," I said. My voice traveled the room and came back to me without an echo. I spoke the names that mattered. I am Eva Ward. Lily and Noah are my children. That is the entire bloodline of my courage. A hush rolled out from the front tables and met the hush from the back. It settled over the carpet like a careful blanket. I felt the knot at the base of my skull loosen. I was not a cautionary tale. I was a person with a spine. Caleb's smile held. He tried to step closer, to fold his shadow over mine. I gave the stage one measured step backward and kept the light on my face. The host put a hand to his earpiece. The tech moved a slider. The cursor on the screen stopped blinking. The white field behind me steadied as if it had found its courage too. I did not look up. I kept my eyes on the room that had been designed to make me smaller and told it no. I told it a line about paper and names, about the way ink can be used like a knife or like a key. I never once said the word forgiveness. I never once said the word shame. I spoke about structure and what happens when a mother learns where the lever sits. The balcony curtains lifted in a slow sigh and fell. The photographer lowered his camera the way a man lowers a weapon when the fight he wanted turns into work. Julian's voice did not enter the room. His presence did. It held behind me like a wall that had decided to go on strike until the noise obeyed. I glanced to the sound booth, and the assistant touched a button like a piano key. The screen woke. The logo vanished. Numbers appeared in plain black. A line of text that did not need exclamation marks. A title that said Lot 23. A subtitle that named a bundle. Beneath it, the list of properties as neat as a grocery receipt. Sixth on the list, the building 3 blocks from the bakery. A clause highlighted in pale gold. Protected tenancy upheld under city law. The bottom line in heavier type. Buyer of record, Hale Foundation. Transfer of stewardship to begin immediately. Primary tenant, Eva Ward. A sound started at the back. Not applause. Breathing. People remembering how. Caleb turned toward the screen as if a stranger had walked onto his stage. Celeste tilted her head to read the line in gold. She had to swallow before she could hide it. The host took a half step toward me with a hand outstretched that meant he wanted to move the night along. I did not take his hand. A guard by the balcony reached for his radio. The cameraman chose the chandeliers again. Nora stepped into the aisle for the first time, small and solid, a person built for storms that prefer velvet. I felt the next sentence lift to the back of my teeth, the one that would make the room choose between spectacle and change. I drew breath. I raised the microphone. The screen brightened by a shade. The room leaned. The screen steadied. Plain type. Plain truth. The line in gold did not shout. It held. Lot 23. Debt bundle. 6 properties. The building 3 blocks from the bakery glowed like a word someone had been trying to erase. Protected tenancy upheld under city law. Buyer of record. Hale Foundation. Transfer to begin immediately. Primary tenant, Eva Ward. I did not look back. I kept my face on the room. The silence had weight. You could feel it press into the carpet. Caleb tried for a laugh. It caught on the way out. He lifted his glass and found it empty. He looked for a stage manager to rescue him and found only the host holding a smile that had learned its own limits. Celeste did not move. Her mouth softened by a fraction and then remembered the cameras and went still again. I lifted the microphone. I kept my voice even. A lease is a promise. A clause is a lock. Tonight the lock holds. Across the floor, Nora slid into view near the aisle with the calm of a person who knows where the load-bearing beams live. The assistant at the sound booth touched another key. The screen changed again. The notarization that was never real. The retired stamp. The wrong loop on the W, highlighted and enlarged until the pattern confessed to the back row. There was a rustle at the balcony as if the door had wanted to be part of the old plan and did not know what to do with its hands. The photographer lowered his camera to his thigh. He knew when a night had traded spectacle for paper. Julian did not step onto the stage. He did not need to. He gave a small signal toward the side wings, and a man with a square jaw and a clean clipboard appeared at the edge of the light. Auction staff. He spoke for the room with a voice that respected wood and contracts. Lot 23 has closed, he said. Proceeds transferred. Title packets en route to the registrar. Tenant notifications queued in plain language. Delivery tonight. Gasps do a strange thing when they realize they have met a fact. They become breath again. People remembered they were people and inhaled. The chandeliers hummed on their chains. Caleb lunged, all charm gone, hand out for the microphone as if it had stolen something from him. I took one step back. The host stepped forward. Julian lifted 2 fingers. Security materialized like a polite wall and caught the move without turning it into a scene. A guard in a dark suit touched Caleb's sleeve with 2 fingertips, and the gesture brought him back into his own skin. He knew better than to fight cloth that looked like that. Celeste's smile returned with a tremor stitched into the edge. She put a hand on Caleb's arm as if she were closing a cabinet softly. She faced the room and tried to steer. We are thrilled to support families, she said. Her tone reached for warm and landed on tepid. The word thrilled died in the carpet. I did not let the night collapse into awkward. I kept my voice steady. The Hale Foundation has transferred the stewardship of my former unit under the protected clause. Lily and Noah will sleep in a room with a door that shuts and a window that remembers our morning. Other primary tenants with minor children will receive the same letter by dawn. No logos. No speeches. Addresses and facts. The screen confirmed it with a clean slide. A simple template. 3 paragraphs in plain type. You are a protected tenant. Here is the law. Here is the number to call. Here is the key handoff schedule. This is not a favor. It is enforcement. The host took a breath as if to thank me for my remarks and tipped the night back into the program. I did not hand the moment away. I lifted my glass of water and made the smallest toast a room like this had heard. To structure. I drank. The room, with nothing left to argue, followed. The quartet found its place like a tide returning to work. Soft notes wove through the tables. The sound man pushed the fader until the music was a cushion under the talk. Chairs moved. Plates shifted. A scatter of applause started, brief and real. Not for a show. For a door that had opened. I set the microphone on the piano lid with a careful click. I gave the host his stage back. He swallowed once, nodded, and tried to say the next line on his card as if it still fit the night. It did not, but the audience let him finish because they had already heard what mattered. On the floor, the donors parted for me. Not a lane for spectacle. A lane for passage. People murmured the small words that are useful when you have nothing else to offer. Thank you. Good. About time. I nodded without slowing. I did not need their language any more than they needed mine. The papers had done the speaking. At the edge of the crowd, a woman I recognized from a tenant list I had read an hour earlier stood with a hand over her mouth. Her dress looked borrowed. Her eyes looked like rain choosing whether to fall. Nora appeared at her elbow and pressed a card into her palm. The woman closed her hand around it like it was a key, which it was. Caleb recovered enough to try charm again. He aimed it at a table that did not want it. He aimed it at me and realized the distance had changed. Charm is a rope that only works when people agree to hold the other end. My hands were busy. He drifted to the backstage door and whispered into a phone. Celeste threaded a path toward Julian and landed a smile that would have been lethal on a less prepared night. What a surprise, she said. What a generous move. Generosity would have put my name on a welcome mat, Julian said. This put it back on a lease. There is a difference. Her smile cracked by a sliver. She gathered it and tried again. The city will talk. Then let it talk about leases, he said. The auction staffer reappeared and handed him a short stack of stamped confirmations. Julian did not show them to the room. He did what mattered. He passed the top paper to Nora, who passed a copy to the assistant, who headed for the registrar with a speed that made the runner in her shoulders wake up. I stepped down from the stage and met Julian halfway to the aisle. He looked at me as if to ask without using a question. I gave the smallest nod. He turned and the two of us moved like water around a rock that had learned its place. At the back, the photographer stopped me with a lift of his hand. Not for a shot. For a sentence. No balcony, he said. Understood. He lifted his camera and caught the chandeliers with the screen behind them, numbers instead of logos, gold claws instead of gold script. A picture of light doing the right job. He lowered the lens and let me pass. By the doors, the usher with the clipboard stood very straight and very quiet. She looked at my face and then at the screen. When our eyes met, she gave a single, quick nod that meant she had decided what story to tell herself about the night. It would be a useful one. The hallway breathed cool. The elevator chimed. I exhaled once and felt my shoulders drop a fraction. The floor under my feet had a new message for my bones. You can stand here. Before the doors closed, a voice slid through the gap, soft and urgent. Caleb. The tone a man uses when he has run out of charm and started counting his options. Eva, he said. We need to talk. I did not turn. Talking had been done by paper and law. The elevator eased us downward. The music softened to a thread and then let go. The mirror in the car threw my face back at me, and it did not flinch. On the ground floor, the side exit opened into air that had not learned the party's rules. A car idled at the curb. Inside, 2 booster seats waited like promises. My phone buzzed once. The sitter. Credits rolling. 2 small heads heavy against 2 small shoulders. I texted back one word that had been missing from my life for too long. Home. We were halfway to the curb when a man stepped from the shadow near the pillars and blocked my path by an inch. Not security. A messenger. He held out a thin envelope and spoke with the professional calm of someone who knows paper can end fights faster than voices. For Ms. Ward, he said. I took it. The weight was wrong for a bill and right for a key. I slid a thumb under the flap and felt metal catch the pad of my finger. 1 key. 1 tag. 1 address I knew by heart. The building 3 blocks from the bakery. Unit number 6. The loop on the W correct. The ink still damp. The car door opened. Night breathed. Across the street, a delivery truck rattled over a manhole and the sound ran through the pavement into my shoes. Behind me, 2 sets of footsteps quickened. 1 too familiar. 1 new and fast. The elevator doors whispered shut. The street learned it might be asked to host another scene. I closed my hand around the key and stepped toward the car. The footsteps behind me quicken. Heat rolls up my spine. Then a small shape slices between me and the pillar. Nora. Her hand opens like a gate and closes again. Security steps in, polite and immovable. Caleb's voice lands on the curb a second later, too soft to draw cameras, too sharp to be kind. I do not turn. The car door shuts on the sound. The city becomes glass and tail lights and the soft rattle of a key against my palm. The sitter's street is quiet. 2 small bodies lift from warm seats and find my shoulders with that heavy trust that humbles a person without asking. We climb to our room and I bolt the door and hold it for 1 extra beat the way a swimmer holds the wall. Noah sleeps before I set him down. Lily curls her feet into my thigh and sighs. I sit on the carpet and lay the key on my knee. The tag is thin metal. The address is home written like a decision. Morning tries on mercy. I let it. Tea in paper cups. Toast cut into triangles. I call the school and the voice on the other end says bring them at 9 and we will make a space. We walk in with the folder under my arm and new pencils in a bag that used to carry everything we owned. Lily clings for 3 breaths, then hunts the reading corner. Noah finds the map on the wall and taps the river with a finger as steady as a promise. I sign their names on 2 lines and press the pen down hard enough to leave a groove. Outside, the air tastes cleaner than it did last week. The phone vibrates. Nora first. Your building keys are ready for handoff at 5. The registrar stamped the packet at dawn. The clause letter is on every primary tenant's door in your line. I text back the word thank you and she replies with 2 more. See you. A second message from a number I recognize and do not. Celeste's media person writes with silk on her tongue. She invites me to a calm conversation about my inspiring journey. I delete the message. A third arrives before my thumb leaves the screen. Caleb, brave now that the night is over, says he would like to clear the air. He uses a phrase that sounds borrowed from a lawyer. I block him. The 4th message is from Julian's assistant. A statement will go live at noon. 1 sentence. No names. No adjectives. I ask what it says. A single line pings back. We lead with structure. The rest is noise. By 10, I sit on a bolted chair in a narrow office with a door that refuses to close all the way. Across from me, a woman with gray streaks and a linen jacket taps a pen against a legal pad and lets me finish before she speaks. Her name is Farah. Her voice is even, never soft, never hard. She listens to the way I say loop on the W and storage unit and forged and the date on the lease. She opens a folder and shows me what she will do with those words. First, she says, we file an emergency motion to freeze movement on any account that handled money tied to your name without your consent. Second, we file to correct the public record on the lease and attach the notarization issue so it walks into the room with its hand already raised. Third, we prepare a temporary order for custody that matches what the world has already seen for months so a judge does not need to play hero. Fourth, we get the storage unit opened with a warrant. I want the printer that taught itself your signature. I want the hard drive that thinks it is a diary. I ask nothing with my mouth. My hands ask for me. She hears them and nods. I need 3 signatures and a last known address for your ex. I give her both and the address comes out like a splinter. She passes a pen. I sign. The ink dries with a shine that feels like a yes. At noon, the foundation posts the sentence on a page with no logo bigger than a thumbnail. We lead with structure. The rest is noise. Reporters try to wrestle it into a paragraph that loves adjectives. The sentence refuses to grow. It stays what it is. A line you can stand a day on. At 1, the first maintenance crew lets themselves into my old building with a legal packet and a pair of kind eyes. They move like decent weather. Paper on doors. Knocks that wait. A crate of new locks. A list of dates for key handoffs printed in large type. I watch them for a minute from across the street with my shoulders against a lamppost. A woman I do not know reads the letter and puts a hand to her mouth and laughs one hard laugh that turns into a sob and then back into laughter again. I step forward and then stop. Nora is already there with a card and a calm voice and a schedule that can carry grief and relief at the same time. By 2, Farah calls. The unit lease is corrected on the record. The judge signed the temporary custody order with a pen that does not run out of ink. Caleb's accounts blinked and froze. She says it like weather again. A front moved through. Doors shut. We will open the ones that belong to you. She asks me to meet her at 4 to walk through the papers once more so my mouth can be the first place their shape learns. I agree and set an alarm. I buy 3 apples and a box of pasta and a jar of sauce and carry them in a canvas bag that once held a spare pair of socks and a book Noah never finished because nights got messy. I pick the kids up at 3. The teacher tells me Noah helped a shy kid find the map for the bus route. Lily drew a picture of a house with a window that looks like the one we lost. I pretend not to see the tears she erased with the side of her hand. We walk to the park and eat apples on a bench. Julian texts 2 words that do not force a decision. Tea later. I answer the way a person answers when her compass still needs quiet. After 5. Farah lays out the next steps. The storage unit will open in the morning. A detective who has opinions about paper will stand there with a camera and a bag for devices. If they find what she expects, the charges will start small and real and then climb if Caleb argues with gravity. She shows me the court date on a sheet in neat type. It is sooner than I feared and later than I want. It sits on the table like an object you cannot move without picking up. The afternoon slides toward 5 and the sky remembers how to blue. We stand on the cracked sidewalk outside the building 3 blocks from the bakery and the letter on the door smiles with its plain words. A super with a ring of keys counts out loud. 6 is in the middle. He holds the ring like a ritual and peels the right one without drama. He asks for my ID and watches my face while I hold it beside the picture so the paper matches the skin. He nods. He turns the lock. Metal admits what paper has required. Inside, the air is a little stale and a lot familiar. The window faces the bakery and remembers the way light pretends to be butter when the ovens start before dawn. The floor has the scratch in the corner where Noah dragged a chair once to see a parade that did not exist. The radiator ticks like a person telling herself a story. Lily runs a hand over the chalk wall where her height marks stopped 8 months ago. She adds a new line with a fingernail. Noah stands in the kitchen and counts cabinet doors with reverence. I set the bag on the counter and take the lid off the jar, and the smell of tomatoes decides to be home. I step back into the hall while they argue about where to put the cups. The super heads upstairs to change a bulb that never liked its job. Nora leans on the rail a floor below, phone to her ear, speaking the language of logistics like a song. She looks up and lifts a thumb. The gesture is small. It holds the day together. At 7, a car idles at the curb and the driver lifts a hand without leaving his seat. I walk down with a bag of trash because old habits have their own pride. Out of the dark, a man steps forward and stops just shy of my space. Not Caleb. A courier in a black jacket with a patch on his sleeve that says a company name I know. He holds out a padded envelope and nods at the printed label. My name. My address. The loop on the W correct. For you, he says. Signature not required. It is light as paper and heavy as thought. I carry it upstairs and lay it on the table and stare. I open it with the blunt butter knife and slide a slim drive into my palm and a single folded page that smells like dust. I unfold the page. The first line is a storage unit number written in blocky ink. The second is a code. The third is a sentence that tilts the floor by a degree I can feel in my teeth. It is not only your signature, it says. He practiced others. Mine sits in box 12. A key drops from the crease and rattles on the table like a small, bright step. The room does not move. The children do not hear it over their pasta. My phone lights with a message from Farah. The warrant cleared faster than expected. We open at 9. She adds one more line that is almost gentle. Bring someone to hold your shoulder. I look at the drive. I look at the key. I look at the window that faces the bakery and the soft reflection of my face in the dark glass. The room is steady. The work is not done. Down the hall, the radiator ticks and the sauce bubbles, and Noah laughs at something Lily says about noodles being just long smiles. My hand rests on the metal of the small key and finds its temperature. Night pulls the sky over the city and waits. Morning came in clean strokes. I dropped Lily and Noah at school with their new lunch cards and the promise of noodles after. Farah waited outside the storage facility with a paper cup and a stack of signed orders that made doors behave. She nodded toward the roll-up units with their metal smiles and said the detective was on his way. Julian arrived a minute later with his hands in his pockets, the posture of a man prepared to stand where needed and nowhere else. The manager led us down a corridor that smelled like dust and battery. Box 12 sat halfway along, a purple lock on the latch. The detective came around the corner with a small camera and a patient face. He checked Farah's paper, checked the number on the door, then cut the lock in a single clean bite. Metal clinked to the floor. The door rolled up with a rattle that sounded like a drawer in a bad dream. Inside waited the kind of mess that thinks it is organized. Banker boxes stacked in 2 neat columns. A folding table. A cheap printer with a smear of ink across its mouth. A plastic crate filled with those small rubber fingers clerks use to count. The detective did not say anything. He put on gloves with the care of a person folding a flag and lifted the first lid. Practice sheets. Lines of my name in block letters softening into cursive. The wrong loop on the W again and again until the page thought it was right. Underneath, other names. A neighbor from the old building. A woman who used to babysit for us twice a month. Farah leaned in and breathed out in that way she has, measured and tight. She slid each page into a clear sleeve and wrote a number on the corner. The next box held a notary stamp that did not belong where it was and a bag of forged seals in different sizes. Beside it sat a thumb drive in a plastic case and a ledger with columns that wanted to look legitimate. The detective photographed each piece, then passed the drives to Farah, who labeled them and slid them into a padded envelope. He did not hurry. He did not need to. Time had tilted our way. A phone lay face down under a stack of contract templates. Farah looked at the detective and he gave the smallest nod. She tapped the power button with the edge of her glove. The screen woke to a lock pattern that would have kept most people out. The detective took one look at the smear of oil on the glass and drew the pattern with 2 deft strokes. The phone opened like a mouth that had given up lying. Messages bloomed. One thread from a photographer I recognized from the balcony that never got fed. "Meet me on the roof at 10. Another from a number saved as silver. The tone was crisp. "We need the speech tighter. No pity, more optics." The last thread was a set of photos of signatures, mine circled in red with notes beside it. "Loop cleaner. Pressure lighter. Try again." Farah's jaw set. She did not gloat. She did not let disgust spill. She catalogued, copied, sealed, and signed, chain of custody glinting in her handwriting. The detective boxed the printer, tagged the stamp, and zipped the phone into a pouch. When we were done, the unit looked like a room that had been relieved of a sickness. Back outside, the air felt like fresh water. Farah checked her watch. The emergency docket had a gap at 2 for a judge who liked to end harm rather than schedule it. We would make it. She turned to me and said she wanted me clean and calm. I said I could do calm. She smiled once with her eyes and told me to drink water and eat something with salt. By 1:45 we were through security at the courthouse, pockets turned inside out, folder in hand. The hallway had the sound of decisions breathing. People in suits moved in narrow lines. People without suits sat on benches and tried to keep their knees still. Farah found our courtroom and spoke to the clerk with the same tone she used with judges and plumbers. Respect and purpose. The clerk glanced at the stack of exhibits and the clean labels and slotted us in. The room itself was pale wood and tired carpet and the simple rise of a bench that asks for better. The judge wore no drama. She read quickly. She did not pretend to forget the law. I took the seat Farah pointed to and felt the grain of the wood under my palms steady me. Julian chose a chair behind us, 2 rows back. He kept his hands folded and his mouth closed. He was not the subject. He was ballast. Caleb entered on a gust of cologne and habit, hair in place, jaw set as if charm could still make gravity polite. Celeste slid into the pew with 2 seats between them, a varnished calm painted over something brittle. Caleb's lawyer looked at our stack of exhibits and pretended not to flinch. Farah went first. No poetry. No heat. She laid the story on the table like parts of a clock. Lease copy. Wrong loop on the W. Notary retired. Storage unit number 12. Printer with ink still wet. Phone messages. Photos of practice sheets with my name multiplied like a bad idea. The detective took the stand and spoke like a man describing weather. He explained how he opened the lock, how he photographed the boxes, how he preserved the evidence. He did not once say outrage. He said record and chain and seal and timestamp, which is what truth wears to court. The judge asked 2 questions. They were both simple and both hard. Was there any indication the tenant had consented to the signatures? None. Were any minors affected by the forged filings? Yes. Farah called me. I walked to the witness chair on legs that had learned to stand their own weight again. I swore in and sat. She asked me to state my name and the names of my children. The words moved across the room and made it warmer. She asked me whether I had signed the lease in question. No. Whether I had authorized the credit lines or the car or any of the documents with that wrong loop. No. She asked me where my children had slept last night. In our apartment 3 blocks from the bakery under a clause that the city remembered. Caleb's lawyer kept his voice silk and his questions small. Had I ever given Caleb permission to sign something for me? I had once, years ago, a daycare permission slip when I was sick, and I had covered the signature with my hand when he finished because I did not like the way it looked. Had I stayed at the hotel willingly? Yes, because safety is a door you walk through when it is offered. Had Julian offered me money? He had offered structure and quiet and a room. He had kept my name on the key. Caleb took the stand against advice because pride loves a microphone. He called the practice pages harmless. He called the lease a misunderstanding. He called the storage unit an office. Farah's mouth did not move. She laid a photo of the notary stamp on the rail and waited. He said the notary was a friend. Farah slid the retirement notice under the photo. He tried to pull warmth back into the room with a story about second chances. The judge did not lean in. She looked at the time. When it was Julian's turn, Farah kept it brief. Where were you on the night of the gala? In the room. Did you purchase lot 23? The foundation did. Why? To stop harm in a way the law could not if we had waited. Did you ask for publicity? No. He let the words fall like stones into a river and did not splash. The judge lowered her pen. Orders came in clean lines. The lease correction would stand. The protected clause would be enforced across the bundle. The accounts tied to the forged documents would freeze pending a full audit. The storage unit contents would be held until charges were filed. A temporary custody order matching lived reality would take effect that day with a supervised schedule for visits if Caleb requested them and passed a review. She added a narrow sentence that carried teeth. Any attempt to contact Ms. Ward outside counsel would constitute harassment and would be addressed as such. Caleb stood too fast and bumped the table. The sound went sharp in the quiet room. He tried to speak and found his lawyer's sleeve instead. Celeste stayed very still, fingers laced only to keep them from betraying her. The clerk rose with a packet. Farah took it without a word and handed me copies that smelled like the inside of a new book. The judge gave the smallest nod, a blessing without religion, and called the next case as if gravity were her hobby and she was very good at it. In the hallway, air moved again. Farah squeezed my hand once and told me to go before the cameras learned the shape of my coat. Julian stayed back to speak to the detective. I walked toward the door and the day found me there, bright and unafraid. Outside, the steps held the usual gauntlet. A few microphones. A man with a camera leaning his whole weight into his lens. The sentence went live again on screens in their hands. We lead with structure. The rest is noise. One reporter called my name as if there were a prize for catching it. I kept moving. The sun was low enough to paint the edges of buildings in gold. It did not pick a side. At the curb, the driver opened the rear door. A text from the sitter arrived with a photo of Lily asleep in her lap and Noah pretending to be awake, one eye open like a joke. My throat loosened. My shoulders found their true height again. I typed noodles and a heart I did not apologize for. Farah joined me with a new envelope and the look of a woman who knows the next hour is as important as the last. She said the registrar would record the judge's orders by 6. She said the unit keys could stay with me now without a witness. She said the detective would call when the evidence room door shut. Julian stepped out of the shadow by the column. No tie, no speech. He asked if I wanted him to ride along to the school. Only if I asked. I told him to meet us at the corner with the chalk hopscotch squares and to bring spoons for ice cream that melts too fast. He smiled with his eyes and said he would be there 5 minutes before we were. We pulled away from the curb. The courthouse shrank in the rear window. A sedan slid in behind us and stayed there for 3 blocks. Nora's text landed before I could name the fear. You are being followed. Left at the bakery. 2 turns. I will close the gap. The driver took the corner smooth as thread. The sedan drifted on. At the next light, it vanished into traffic and took its quiet camera with it. My phone buzzed again. Nora's 2 words were plain and strong. You are clear. I leaned my head back and let the seat hold 1 more minute. The day had stamped itself on paper. The work had more hours to run. Lily would wake. Noah would ask for extra noodles. The key in my pocket knew where home was. Outside the glass, the city kept moving. At the far end of the street, the bakery's metal gate was already rolling up for the morning that would come after this night. By the time the jacaranda on our block bloomed and made the sidewalk look like it had been dusted with purple sugar, the apartment had learned us. The radiator ticked in our rhythm. The window knew how to catch morning. Lily taped drawings to the fridge that looked like maps to places she had invented. Noah lined library books on the sill and kept a pencil tucked behind his ear like a carpenter of ideas. I worked 2 afternoons a week at the reading room Julian's foundation funded, a place with bright rugs and low shelves where kids learn to make friends with sentences. 3 nights a week, I took the front desk at a hotel that minded its quiet. Between those shifts, I stacked small days into something that could carry us. Farah moved our case along without theater. Nora lived on the other side of a phone that always answered. The storage unit evidence turned into charges that traveled on their own legs. Caleb learned the clock he had used on other people now lived on his wall. Celeste tried a soft interview that died in the comments because the city had already chosen the story that made sense. It was not mine or hers. It was the one with paper. Saturdays we met Julian at the market under the gray bridge with the chipped paint. We walked the stalls and bought tomatoes that still had warmth from the crate and a loaf that went crack when you pressed your thumb to it. He learned to leave his name at the curb. He learned to sit on a park bench without arranging the world. He learned the shape of our calendar and kept step. One evening, on the path by the river where the maples throw shade that looks like lace, he put a hand on the back of the bench and kept it there so his words would not turn into a net. "I want to love you," he said. "Not because I found you in a story. Because I keep finding you in the day. I let the river say nothing for a beat. Love has been a speech in my life. It has also been a bill. I owed him neither. I owed myself a fence. Love needs proof on the worst day," I said. "Not a bouquet on the best. Meet me there." He nodded. He did not ask for a date on the calendar. He did not ask what the worst day would be. That is not how it works. The day found us anyway. It came with heat, a summer storm that rose out of nowhere and sat on the neighborhood like a wet hand. At 4, the sky went the color of pewter. At 5, the wind gathered chairs in the courtyard and made them walk. At 6, thunder knocked on the roof like a man with bad manners. At 6:10, the lights went out. The building sighed. Somewhere above us, a child cried. The stairwell turned to a gray tunnel. The emergency lamps thought about it and chose not to help. I set the sauce off the burner and felt the quiet change shape. Phones lit palms. The superintendent's keyring chimed on the landing like a small wind chime learning a new song. I moved the kids to the couch with the last daylight and handed them flashlights like wands. "Stay here," I said. "Count to 100 and then start again." I stepped into the hallway and called down to the rail. "Anyone need stairs?" I asked. "Anyone need water?" Voices answered soft as moth wings. Mrs. Alvarez from 3 needed her inhaler and the dark had made her panic. Mr. Tao on 5 said the elevator had stopped with his niece and a baby inside. A teenager yelled that his grandmother had lost her phone and was talking to the air in the kitchen like it would turn into a wall if she kept asking. Nora's text landed like a hand on my back. "We are 2 blocks out with lanterns and batteries. Do you want us to go to the super or to you?" "To the super," I wrote. "I am on the stairs." I took the steps 2 at a time, counting landings out loud so people could mark their breath against numbers. On 5, Mr. Tao waited with his ear to the elevator door, calm as someone trying not to be afraid for another person. I talked to his niece through the crack. Her voice was thin and brave. The baby babbled like rain on glass. "Help is here," I said. "You do not have to be brave the whole time. You can take turns." Downstairs, the superintendent wrestled a crank from a closet like a sailor unearthing a mast. Nora arrived at a run with 2 lanterns and a battery pack, hair dark with rain, eyes bright with focus. She did not waste words. She put a light in the super's hands and one in mine and took the crank and began to turn. The elevator answered with a groan that sounded like gratitude. When the door slid an inch, Mr. Tao bent the gap to a palm's width. His niece slid the baby through first and we passed her like a small comet, hand to hand. Then the girl herself, shaky and smiling and very young. Back on 3, I found Mrs. Alvarez on the floor with her back to the cabinet and her breath trying to run away. I put a lantern on the counter and the light turned her face into a map. We counted together. Nora brought water. The teenager found his grandmother's phone under a dish towel and the kitchen turned back into a room. My phone buzzed in my pocket, the text tone I had set for Julian on purpose. In the van outside with coolers and tea and 2 dozen lanterns. Do you want me in the lobby or on the curb? Do you want nothing? Say the word. Curb, I wrote. Give to the super. No names. Understood, he answered, and then nothing else. The storm punched the block one more time and rolled north. Sirens passed us the way thunder passes when it gets bored. The city decided to let our power return in sections. The hallway light near the stairs blinked like a sleepy eye. The elevator sighed itself to the next floor and stopped with a thud that sounded like relief. The building recalculated. People opened doors and called across the railings, laughter soft with adrenaline. The internet returned like a gossip with old news. A clip of Celeste speaking lightly about second chances tried to make the rounds. It fell apart in the comments. A rumor that I had stolen a property fizzled under a screenshot of the clause mailed to every door in our line. A single photo tried to catch me in the stairwell, but all it got was a blur of a lantern and Nora's hand, and the caption under it read, "A neighbor helping neighbors." The worst day does not always come with cameras. Sometimes it comes with a crank and a hallway that smells like wet bread and courage. At 10, Julian texted a 3-word report. Lanterns all gone. I sent back the name of a hardware store that would carry more in the morning and a thank you that did not require an answer. He did not send one. I tucked Lily and Noah into bed with the flashlights standing like sentries on the dresser. The apartment smelled like tomatoes and wet wool. The window found the moon after the storm and made a white coin on the floorboards. I washed 2 plates by feel and stood a minute with my hands in warm water to remind the day that we were still here. In the quiet, another message slipped through. Farah. Motion to compel granted. The printer in evidence, the notary stamps catalogued, the phone cloned. She added one dry sentence that tasted like precision. He tried to move money. He could not. When the lights came back full, the building breathed. People clapped once out of habit and then laughed at themselves. I stepped into the hall and leaned on the rail and listened to the stairs calm down. The super sat on the bottom step with the crank across his knees and drank tea out of a paper cup. Nora gave him a nod that would have been a medal if the world were honest about who keeps it going. I went back inside and watched the kids sleep. Morning smelled clean and faintly of ozone. I took the early bus to the hotel, worked the front desk through checkouts and questions about the best place for pancakes, and clocked out with a pen that had finally learned my name. On the way home, I cut across the park. He was on the bench by the loud geese, a plain paper bag between his hands and 2 plastic spoons sticking out of the corner like flags. No tie. No speech. He stood as I reached him and waited until I sat before he touched the bag. Pistachio, he said. Melts fast. We will lose the battle if we talk too long. We ate standing spoons like kids who had found a secret. He looked at the small green river we were making in the lid and then at me. Worst day enough, he asked. Not as a test, as a measure. You kept the curb, I said. You kept the names off the bags. You sent light to the super and not to your reputation. You did not knock on the door and ask to be seen. That is proof. He nodded and did not pretend the sentence was a vow. He knew better. He put the lid down, wiped his thumb on the brown paper, and did the smallest thing that mattered most. He asked what the next ordinary day looked like and how he could fit inside it without rearranging it. School, I said. reading room, pasta, laundry, a walk that takes in the bakery and the river without buying anything in between. Done, he said. I will meet you at the corner and carry the heavy bag. Not because I have to, because my hands want an honest job. I slid the spoon into the bag and tied the knot. The geese made their opinion of us known. We obeyed and fed them last, not first, the way Lily insists, so we can have a minute to sit with our hands quiet. On the way out of the park, he kept half a step behind me, not to hide, to remember the rule we wrote beside the river. At the apartment, Lily ran to the door with a new drawing of 3 stick figures under a window square. Noah showed him the pencil behind his ear like he was letting a friend in on a trade secret. Julian took the paper and the pencil with care and did not write over either. Later, after dishes and a chapter of a book that had survived the library waitlist, after the kids fell asleep and the radiator ticked itself into comfort, I stood at the window and watched the bakery lights snap off one by one. My hand found the key in my pocket and rolled it in my palm until the edges felt like home. Promises are easy. Paper is hard. Proof is a steady heat you can cook supper on when the storm goes out and leaves you to your own hands. The city kept moving. It always does. He kept his step. I kept my name on the door and my feet under me. The rest will be the work we have already started.